Welcome to part two of the conversation I had with my brother. Part one of the interview, he spoke and shared about his experience with grief after the passing of our sister. And in this part of the conversation, he shares his experience with grief after the passing of our mom. Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives, in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. So, hermanitos, now share a little bit more about the most recent experience you had with grief and death and that process. So, maybe let's talk about a little bit about our mom and that process of grief.
Yeah, sure. There's like obviously so much I could share, but I'll just start sharing and then
Yeah,
you please, prompt me. So,
yes.
um
Actually, if I can just prompt you even now if you
yeah,
don't
please
mind,
go
just a
for
little
it.
bit. Okay.
Or else I'll just
So
keep
I know
blabbing
because
on.
it's so easy. Yeah, it's so easy to go into all the details of even just how it happened and so forth. So if we want to like sum it up, our sister's passing was a sudden death. Our mom's passing was one due to an illness. So there was that kind of difference. But more the maybe the experience of the grief component you could talk a little bit about the death itself and maybe what led up to it and like the things that maybe bonded you with her through that process. I'm kind of maybe telling you a little bit too much to what to say, but that I don't know if that's a good prompt there on your end. Would that be good a good
Yeah.
place to start? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because definitely the biggest there's so many differences between my sister's passing and my mom's passing. Just like you mentioned, my sister's passing was an accident. My mom's, so therefore it was sudden. My mom's passing was gradual over 10 months. Well, I guess longer, but I guess we're already like in the process of dying since we're
Every
born.
day, of
Yeah,
course.
exactly.
At least
But
since diagnosis
yeah,
to death
from
was
diagnosis to
February
death.
to
Yeah,
November. Yeah.
exactly. Um, and so it was very different, and and therefore I was very connected with it from the very beginning. I remember the 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 moment we found out that she was diagnosed. We were all on a call, on a conference call, since we were all living in different parts of the world, and my mom shared. And it's so interesting. I often hesitate to share this with people, and I don't know if I've even shared it with you,
Mm.
Kendra.
Well, I'm curious
Um,
now.
I've only shared it with like really close people, but
Oh, thanks. You just said I'm not close.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
came out
thank you.
wrong.
Okay, let's just hang up
No,
now.
I
Stop.
take that back. No, I just think it can be misinterpreted very easily. But I think for the sake of for the sake of your podcast, Candida, I'll go ahead and
Hmm.
share it.
Yes,
And
please.
basically, like right after the phone call, um, um, I and during the phone call, I felt a tremendous sense of this sounds so wrong, of joy,
Hmm.
um, and where this comes from. And again, this is not something I could have prompted. It's not something I was prepared for. It's
Hmm.
not something that I like. Um, uh, I wasn't conditioned to. It was a reaction. And like I remember sitting on the sofa. I guess comparing it now to lying down on the sofa at 7 years old, face down, crying. hearing of my
Mm.
sister's passing, mimicking my younger sister, or the youngest of the sisters, Catherine. This time I was sitting on the sofa and I was just like with my hands on my head and then like standing up and pacing, but like in excitement, as if I had just heard amazing news.
Mm.
And literally, what was going through my heart and my mind at that point was, I can't believe that she's so lucky to very soon be able to be again with her daughter, with her mom, with her sisters that have passed, with her father, all these relatives and friends that had passed. And like, just based on my beliefs about life after death, um I sincerely felt that. And also, something that we're told in the Baha'i writings is like, when we pass away, we discover like all the mysteries um of the world. Like we're sort of, we're in the know now of like all these things that before to us were unknown. And so it's like, oh, she's so lucky, she's gonna get to like
Mm.
like know about all these like mysterious things that I currently don't understand. um and so definitely I can say my relationship with her passing was very different. And so the reason, Ken, that I didn't share it with you directly, or with with our other sister Catherine, or with my dad, was just because it can be easily misinterpreted. And we each had a different process, of
Absolutely.
of
No.
of grieving. And I know how stating that can be totally like taken as like, you know self-righteous, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
um but I share it with all sincerity. Um and so basically, I remember then, not too long after her diagnosis, I went to visit my mom in Atlanta, and I spent 10 days with her. And I was by myself, I wasn't with my wife or with my kids, so I like really got to spend time with her. And I remember she asked me, one day we went to Stone Mountain Park in Atlanta, and we just sat by this lake, and we were praying and meditating and talking. And most of the time we just spent in silence, just like looking at nature, which is one of her favorite things to do and one of my favorite things. And she asked me, like, Danny, like, how are you feeling about this? And I shared with her, like, can I be honest with you? And she was like, yeah, please.
Mm.
And I shared that with her. I shared these feelings, and she was so happy
Well,
like to hear that. And
it's
she
just
was
so
like,
moving.
and she was like, Danny, I feel exactly the same way.
Mm. Oh.
you know
Well, it
you
just
know
kind of wraps around to thinking of you again as that 7-year-old of saying, "Yeah, we're all together in spirit," and that pure heart and spirit of yours still showing up. At that age, at that time, you were how old? When mommy passed away?
oh, when
For
um
27,
27, I guess.
26,
Yeah,
26.
27, something like that.
Not that where this isn't, but the difference. Yeah, actually, exactly, because mom died 20 years after our sister.
Hmm.
So yeah, you were 27. So the difference of that, not the difference, sorry, that how similar you were still in 20
That's
years later, that you're
interesting.
able to still maintain that purity of heart in that process that so many of us sometimes lose through the years. So that right now I got very moved as you were saying all those your reflection in that moment of when you found out that she was close to passing.
Hmm.
Okay, so you're here. It's around April, I think. It was around April, I think, that you were visiting. So just a
Hmm.
couple months after mom's diagnosis, you're having this moment. You shared with her that she felt the same way. And now, what else happened in that? Uh, because there's something very important that happened in that visit that you had with her,
Yeah.
of what she shared with you, that you
she
also kept a secret for a while. So go ahead.
I forgot that I kept it a secret.
Until she
Yeah.
passed away. So go ahead.
um yeah, that day I got probably one of the most precious gifts I've ever received. um she she said, Danny, after your sister's passing 19 years ago, or 18 years ago, I composed a song about life after death in the rhythm of cumbia, the Colombian rhythm of cumbia, which is a very danceable and very lively rhythm, which is ironic in a sense, talking about life after death. But she said she composed it with the hopes of it being used as a tool for people to grieve and for people to not be so sad and to be able to uh, feel more joy for the sake of the soul, um, and the journey they're about to embark on, the spiritual journey. And so she said, I wrote it and I have a simple melody. I haven't told anybody, so I'm just now sharing it with you. Um, because she wasn't a musician or a composer or anything along these lines. It was just something that came.
From her
It
soul.
just sort of, she was sparked with the creative spirit to write it. And she was like, I want you to finish it and I want you to produce it, and I want my friend Leonor Deli, a Colombian singer, to sing it. And moments later, I recorded her singing it and explaining the lyrics, and basically, mo- throughout the months, Leonor Deli, and I would start working on the lyrics and doing some demos, and um, we didn't get to record it before her passing, but just 2 months after we did the recording, and then a few months after that, we did a music video. Um,
Yeah, that I
mhm.
remember. Which, by the way, if you still have the recording of her sharing what the
Oh yeah,
melody is,
definitely.
because we haven't heard that. So, if I can just share a little bit of how you shared with us um, about that, it was the day after our mom passed away. We were preparing for the memorial, and we were all in Florida in our sister's home, and we can maybe go a little bit into the passing itself because music has been a huge part in this journey of our mom's passing. That we'll share a little bit about the moment of her passing itself, but in the when you said you guys you told my sister, dad, and I have something to tell you guys. I want to add this to the memorial tomorrow, and you played the the raw version of Leonor singing the song with the drums, and you said, and you told us the story and you played it. I remember it being just this incredible moment, because it was just like her letting us know that she's fine. And the if you want to say just a little what the chorus is, and also just of the song, and how people can also listen to the whole song.
Yeah, definitely. I had forgotten, um, again, that it was a surprise for you guys.
Yes, it was a surprise, a beautiful surprise. Just like, I mean, we were like, what? Like, how could you keep this so long? But at the
Yeah,
same time, it was so perfect because then
yeah.
it just kind of was for us this comforting feeling too of knowing that this was what her viewpoint was about life after death. And so it just made it even more joyful, even that moment.
Hmm.
Again, like going back again to the moment of joy, how you felt about her when you found out of her having a terminal illness, that then to know that she was really embracing this a new chapter in
Right.
her spiritual journey. So yeah, so the chorus
Yeah.
itself,
So, well,
if you have it
I actually
on
I
your head.
have here obviously the song is in Spanish,
Transcript in Spanish.
but here I have a provisional translation. So the lyrics go: When we are being reborn in the light of a new life, the little angels of heaven will greet us and welcome us in. Seraphims and cherubs with harps and the playing of the drums in a glorious and harmonious choir, and with the thrilling of nightingales. Sorry, the trilling of nightingales.
Ugh, it's
They
just
sing and they dance in circles, and the most brilliant of lights they become. The soul is most gorgeously elegant, dressed up in gala attire, and the precious little fireflies adorn and illumine the path all the while.
Oh, it's just so beautiful. It still moves me every time I hear it. And my son or your nephew Mateo always checks in to see like YouTube views. He's like, "Oh, how many
Oh,
people
really?
have you?" Yes, how many people have heard?
That's super
So
sweet.
to find it, we'll put the link. I'll have to put the link in the notes in the podcast
Yeah.
notes. But the it is
Yeah,
called
people can find
Vuelo
it
al
on,
Reino.
yeah, but
Yeah.
on YouTube, for example, they could even type in the English version. It's called Flight to the Kingdom. So if you put
Okay.
Flight to the Kingdom, Colombian cumbia or Colombian, something along those lines, you'll find it. And the Spanish title is Vuelo al Reino,
Vuelo
which
al Reino.
translates to Flight to the Kingdom.
Okay. So in that process, because let's actually talk a little bit about the moment of mom's death, and I want to then again come back again to the process of you when you actually finish the production of the song itself, because that was kind of part of your mourning process too, and your process of grief as you develop this. But so maybe let's talk a little bit about the day of our
Yeah, of her
the
passing.
days leading up to our mom's passing,
Yeah,
and the actual passing itself, which again has music tied into it as well,
yeah. Well, um,
if that's where you want to talk about it. If that,
yeah, definitely. That's fine. Yeah. Well, actually, before we get into that, I did want to
Mhm.
share just one more thing about
Yes.
like why this song is so significant for me. In the sense, this song was my way to grieve.
Mhm.
Um, and um, and again, it was just a different process for me. I feel, and I'm thankful for this song that she gave me because it gave me permission to accept her journey of death, with joy, and because that's what she wanted as well. Even though it sort of came naturally, it gave me just even more, um, like permission, if that makes any sense, and it allowed me to connect with her in at a much deeper level than ever before, and it still, has that effect, every time I interact with the song or the music video. So I
Well,
just
then,
wanted to share that
well,
one thing.
actually, no. Then let's just talk about that then, because then you had this raw version of it of just Leonor, my mom's friend, and then some drumming with it, and then after her passing was when you decided to go ahead and do a full, more developed version of the song. And so share a little bit then about that journey, because that's part of your grief or your mourning process, because it's something you chose to
Hmm.
kind of use as that tool. um Similar to some extent, like I've even just how kind of it happened even with watching Zorana's videos,
Right, that's
that
true.
then you had those moments of then being able to process your grief 24 years later. But how was it then for you, that process of creating this music video? Now, just for our listeners to know, my brother, we haven't even stated what you do, but you are a musician, you are
Hmm.
a producer. Um, so this is one of you, this is your gift, and this is what you
Hmm.
do for a living as well, correct? So,
Correct.
so share a little bit about that part, please.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a gift, not only because of like the sentiment of it, but then it later it converted into a gift in many other ways I didn't expect. Um, Basically, like because of the song, um, I went and raised funds from family and friends to in order to produce the song and do the music video and hire amazing musicians, like top notch talent, um, in Colombia. We were able to record in the best recording studio in Bogota, and um, and basically that experience with the musicians and all the people who helped on set, like at the music video, and all the camera operators and so on. it was just a beautiful experience. And the way we connected was just like way beyond the music. um, Even though many of them I was meeting for the first time. And from then, it cemented this working and friendship relationship, with all these musicians and engineers and so on. And we've done other projects since then, and every time like something results from that, I thank my mom. I'm like, thank you, mom, for the song, because like, because of what you gave me, I was able to meet such and such a person. I was able to meet such and such a person. It's just
Mm.
amazing.
I hear that's
Um,
that part of the gratitude, the grief gratitude part of this podcast is all these
yeah,
things that you end up being grateful for in this process, and then you don't sometimes even see it till later.
exactly. And just one brief little thing that I love to share is like, uh, the day of the recording session, which was all the song was recorded in one day in like blocks, like all recording live. And I asked the musicians beforehand to bring pictures of their loved ones who had passed. And I took some like string and some clips, and like printed pictures. And so we hung the pictures kind of like a, like clothing rack style, um, and so that we could have them present during the recording session. And before recording, we all, huddled in a circle and said a prayer, and thinking about not just my mom, but our loved ones, to make sure that they were present with us while we recorded. And it had such a powerful effect. Even though the musicians there, we all, had different, you know, belief backgrounds and so on. Like, this was one thing we were able to connect with. Like, we all had lost loved ones, and we knew that we could trust and have faith that we could call upon their souls to guide us, in our creative endeavor of making this song. And that really shaped the the spirit of the song and the way we approached it. It wasn't just like, hey, let's make a hit, or it wasn't anything
Hmm.
along those lines. um so anyways, I really wanted to, I guess, share that. It's
Thank
of
you.
how beautiful it was.
Thank you. No, that is beautiful. So, music then has been like this huge kind of little string tying, from the moment she gave you then the words to that song and the melody to that song, and you then being able to have the song playing at the on her funeral, on the at the day of her funeral, then to then developing the song, mastering the song, to creating a music video, creating these bonds of friendship with all these people and musicians and all these beautiful things that tied in. So that was the journey with that particular song. But then there was also music in the actual moment of our mom's passing.
Hmm.
So if you want to share a little bit about how that came about. And again, we all live in different places. My brother lives outside of the country, and each one of us siblings lives in a different state, and our parents lived in Georgia. So kind of going into into all that and how
Hmm.
we all happened to be there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's just so many details I could share, but I mean, I think just to share a little bit of the context before the night of her passing, like you said, we were all in different places. And so, in a sense, we were always expecting. I remember like always calling or checking in, basically to see like, hey, when should I go to
Hmm.
be next to you? Because I want to be with you for your passing.
Yeah.
Like,
Not
in
only that,
essence.
that was one of our mom's biggest wishes was
Yeah,
that
yeah,
she did not want to die alone, basically, and
yeah.
she would wanted all of us to be there. That was one of the things she definitely had clear, so we wanted to make sure we fulfilled her wish.
Yeah, definitely. And so, it was just so challenging, especially being international, um that I couldn't just like hop over so quickly, or every weekend, like just in case, or anything along those lines. um so there was always just a lot of back and forth. And I remember, when finally I got a call, from Catherine, or a message, basically stating, okay, like, it's a good time now, and that mom has said that it's a good time for you guys to come. And so I arrived, and literally we arrived just two, like my wife, kids, and I, we arrived just like two days before she passed, or the day, sorry, the day before she passed. And
And
I
this
remember.
happened to be, sorry that I
Uh-huh.
interrupt you, but just
No,
so that we
please.
know, like what, so our mom had gone to visit um, my sister with my dad. They had gone to visit, and even though she was already pretty ill, but it was our niece's birthday, and she wanted to be there, and so she went. But then her her can- her symptoms just got really really bad while
Yeah.
she was there. So that's how it ended up being that our mom was at our sister's home in that moment that that Danny's now recalling.
Hmm. And I remember, uh so she was basically in hospice care, at my sister's home. She had the, like the hospital bed, and there was a nurse always there. uh and I just remember like feeling such a sense of peace in in the home, because we were all together. um and even her two best childhood friends from Colombia flew in, and they got to join us. Um, I remember the night that she passed. That same night, we had a like little family powwow, and like without my mom, and we were just already talking, the logistics, like the details of the funeral and the program and this and that. And it was getting pretty late. It was like 10 p.m. or something like that. And my mom's friends were about to head out to the apartment where they were staying. And they said, what about, like, before we go, why don't we all say prayers together? um and and we started. So
Like
we were like, yeah, that's a good idea. So we joined them, and we just started saying prayers.
around our mom, our
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
sitting around our mom,
Like,
yeah.
so she's there basically in my sister's master bedroom, which is, it's a big room, so we could all fit. My mom has her own hospital bed there. And we're all just like circled around, like some sitting on a bed, some on a sofa, some standing up. And we just started, like, we said a few prayers, but very quickly they became like all like in like sung, like in harmony and in melody and rhythm. um and we just started singing and singing and singing, and the kids are there as well.
Yeah, there was one.
um
Yeah, because they had gone to bed, with exception of the oldest grandson, which is Mateo,
yeah,
my son.
yeah, 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 that's true. And in the middle of that, um she she had this um kind of like made this noise, like of um like taking
Singing.
in air, or no,
Like
no,
she
sorry,
was
like,
also doing like, oh, like that.
yeah, she like, basically, to give some context, like, she wasn't talking at all, and she had her eyes closed pretty much the whole time, like for the past, few days. And then all of a sudden she like made this noise, and we all kind of looked at each other like, whoa, what was that? And then the nurse said, like, something along the lines of like I mean, he checked her really quick, and then he was like, no, don't worry, guys. I think she was trying to sing with you. Do you remember that, Kendra?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
um and then we just continued, and basically, like, it's like, it's like so vivid, but yet like fuzzy at the same time. um
I'll help you fill in the blanks of whatever
yeah, yeah, yeah,
memory.
please. Anyways, I remember there was just a lot of laughter. Like, we were even just like telling jokes and telling stories. I remember one time we were all like really like huddled close around her bed, and since there was so much song going on, and most of the songs like we all knew, and so we would all kind of chime in, and then like one of her friends, she like started singing this song and kind of like off pitch, off tune, and like nobody was joining in, like she was all by herself, and she sort of stopped like after starting a few lines, and she was like, how come you guys aren't joining in? We're like, we don't know the song. And we all just started cracking up. It was just such a beautiful like dynamic, and
Of
environment,
unity and
mixed,
yeah,
yeah, and mixed emotions, obviously. And a lot of people say that laughter is sometimes used as a way to cope with crying, or
pain.
with
Yeah, with pain.
yeah, exactly. So I'm sure there was a lot of that going on as well, but I think sincerely there was just like humor and laughter. It wasn't um just coping with it. And then I remember there were probably a few more things I could share, but for me, one of the most vivid moments was I had a Native American flute with me, and that she loved hearing me play. That only, I mean, just a few months, like 5 months before I had gotten it, and I had started practicing, and I would play with her in the garden in her home, and she would just love hearing me play it. Um, and I got it to play, and I was about to play, and it was in that moment that she took her last breath.
Correct. And that's the moment
And
that before you started playing the flute, we're like, we need to get everybody down here. Because
oh
since
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Parisa, your wife, had gone to sleep, and then the kid and all the kids, the younger ones, except Mateo, then we ran quickly, got them all, and all came down like within like 2 minutes, basically, or so. We're all there for that to be able to be present
mm-hmm.
in her last breath, basically, almost. And then go ahead, and then that's when you
Yeah, like she
grab
took
the
her
flute.
last breath, and I remember people like looking at each other like is that it? Like, like basically kind of confirming, or like looking at the nurse. And my instinct was just to put the flute to my mouth and start playing.
Mm.
And I wanted to serenade her
Mm,
on
mm.
her journey.
As she
And
was
so I
welcomed to with those angels, and you were part of those. Yeah, serenading her on her way out, as the angels, as in her song says, were greeting her with music too. She,
yeah, yeah.
mm, so beautiful.
And so yeah, it was just such, you know, to me that night felt identical to seeing the birth of my two children,
Mm.
in terms of like there's a lot of joy but yet pain, and it's like, and you're tired, like physically tired, and emotionally too. There's just so much going on, it's so intense. It felt exactly the same.
Yeah. I remember for me it felt because I was also like smiling and laughing, and I remember my kids were a little confused a little about that.
Yeah,
And so and I've had conversations with them since they're mine are the old some of the oldest pretty much of the grandkids, but um it was that I was just so happy that it happened how she wanted. It was like and this is what I've told them before. I'm like, it's not that I'm happy that my mom died. I'm happy that it happened exactly like she wanted. Like, who would have thought that we would all be able to be in the same space at the moment of her death? Like, who would have thought that it could have happened? And to be able to do it that way, and the spirituality and the atmosphere that was there, the music, the prayers, the joy, the love, all combined. It felt
mm-hmm.
for me like being on pilgrimage, in like the Holy Land, and
Mm.
like this really closeness to. It was as you could touch heaven, kind of with your fingertips. It like in another different level of spirituality that was felt in that room
Right.
because of all of us being united for the same purpose. So I can understand what you mean in that moment of that joy, and kind of, sadness, joy, all mixed into one, and how beautiful and spiritual it was.
Mm.
Wow, thank you. And then music has, again, as we've seen, has been that process. Do you ever uh pick up the flute as a way of, even anytime that you're feeling a certain way, the Native American flute, do you ever pick it up? Um or what how have you picked it up in your process of grieving, like
Like to
as a
remember her?
tool?
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
What are
mean,
some of the
just
other things? Yeah.
at memorial services that we've had since then, I pick it up um, to connect with her, or I play the melody of the song that she composed of "Flight to the Kingdom," "Vuelo al Reino." Um, yeah, it's totally a tool for me to connect.
A tool. So what other things are some of those tools that you have found? So music has been a tool for your grieving process. What other things have you found have been tools for your grief journey in these years?
Definitely prayer, and
Mhm.
different kinds of prayer. What I mean by that is like, one, talking to her directly, and talking to my sister as well, or other souls that have passed, depending on what I'm wanting to pray about. um and like asking for advice, or asking for help, or just to for accompaniment. And so, like, that kind of prayer, like, to them, but then also prayer, asking God to assist them in their spiritual journey, which they're still on, and it's eternal. um Song and music, and also just being very open about the process, just like I am here with you right now. Just being very open, and not treating the topic as taboo,
Mhm.
as like, oh, we don't talk about those things, like,
Yeah.
not at all.
Normalizing
Yeah,
normalizing
obviously.
the experience, yeah.
Well, normalizing it, but also obviously like being careful, because I mean, I have to use, tact, in that, I'm totally aware that the topic of death is very sensitive for a lot of people, and they don't want to talk about it. So when I sense that, obviously I'm not going to be like pushy or whatever, or
Mhm.
mention my experience just out of the blue. um just because I'm aware the majority of people do not have the experience, um that that I had, so to speak, and so I have to be careful. So sometimes I feel like sharing my experience can be a source of inspiration, while sometimes it can actually be, uh, provide, you know, guilt, or, other types of feelings.
True. No, that aspect, actually, that point of comparison, what you just said right now, is very, very valid, because a lot of times people think, "Whoa, well, how come if they're," because I've heard these exact words of what I'm gonna say in the process of, for example, when our sister died, like, how come if they're the family and they are doing, in quotations, so well with the process, and I'm not, like, how, and they, in this kind of comparison thing, like, what is wrong then, let's say, with me, if I'm not
Exactly.
dealing with it in the same way as they are? And it's
Exactly.
it's just so different, because um I posted one time on Facebook this comparison of a roller coaster, and everybody being on a roller coaster, because I actually put a picture of an amusement park we had gone to, and every Carlos, my husband, sitting in one, reacting in one way, with those pictures that they take when you're coming down the roller coaster. And each one of us had a completely different reaction, and everybody else, of course, that was on the ride as well. And then made me think that that is basically that journey of grief, that we all are sometimes on the same roller coaster, yet experience it very differently. And it comes with either whatever our backgrounds are, whatever our experiences have been, and there's different things that have led us to be ready for that moment for some people, um that sometimes you don't know, like, for us, you know you know dealing with our mom's passing 20 years after the passing of our sister, there was a lot of of growth in that process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so how we reacted and how we dealt with our grief with our mom, had a lot to do with the growing and experience that we had with going through our sister's passing, right? So
Yeah.
you're right. Like it's good to know that we have to be sensitive to other people's emotions, but then also people need to know that you can't compare how you feel and how you deal with grief with what you're even hearing now, because your experience is going to be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
um, so thank you for bringing that up, because that's a very, very, very valid topic, and part of the reason I have this podcast out just so that people can see that. Um, Now, just to kind of wrap it up, I want to ask you one thing. What do you think has shaped you, like through the grief and through these losses that you've had in your life? And losses, and I'm kind of doing the air quotes here as I'm talking, because these transitions, these big
Don't
major
worry, I can
changes
I
in our
can
life. You
I
can see
feel
them.
like I can see your air.
My little finger
I
quotes.
can feel them.
You can feel it. So, in these huge transitions that we've had in our life, and that you've had in your life, what do you think um, has helped, and how has it shaped who you are now? Do you think there's been any specific relation that you can kind of recall? Oh, yes, I am like this because I've experienced this, or do you think it's been like more of a gradual process? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you mean how these experiences have shaped me, huh?
Shaped you. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's like um I feel like they've like these experiences of and I'll use the air quotes
Hmm.
again in losing a loved one, losing loved ones, um has just totally like I feel in a sense like that particular night of seeing my mom's passing, I'm so grateful to have been there because it confirmed a lot of the beliefs that I had, and it materialized them. You know, they went from they from being theoretical or conceptual
Mm,
to wait a minute. Like right now I feel like all these things that I believe like they're true
mm,
in the sense of like obviously it's not like a scientific fact. It's not like I could say that, but it in terms of like that intuitive feeling that like wait, like messenger was like can be a messenger of joy, like is a messenger of joy, like it is a birth into a new life because that's what it feels like right now. um I don't feel like I've lost my mom. My relationship with her is now different. I
mhm,
can't fly to Atlanta to go visit her, or I can't expect every June or July for her to come visit me and the kids. um so obviously the relationship has changed, but it's still there, and if not even deeper, just we're operating at different dimensions. And um so I guess all I'm trying to say is like it's just totally just cemented much more this belief in our spiritual nature as human beings, and it's impacted. Actually, can I tell you one thing? How it's actually impacted my everyday
yeah,
life as well
yeah.
is she, before she passed, I asked her mom like, how do you think you got um pancreatic cancer? How did
Mhm,
this all come about? And she gave me two reasons. She said, like, she gave me the medical reason, um like in terms of diabetes and like previous things and surgeries she had had and so on. But then she gave me like a more like spiritual reason, and she said like it's from holding in also emotions, and so or sometimes emotions of anger, because like she was a person that totally did not want to make other people feel um sad, or and so she would hold in a lot of her emotions to like not bring other people down or to not create a negative environment. And so basically she said ultimately that affected her health. um and so since then, because I tend to have that personality as well, I've actually, since then I started shifting, consciously trying to shift my behavior, my personality, to be more expressive of my emotions, um, in a sense to combat, since I know in a sense what kind of effect it can have
Hmm.
on our bodies. So I don't
Oh
know.
yeah,
It's
there's
just
lots of
had
studies.
there's
No,
so many
there's lots of
things. Yeah,
studies. Yeah, I mean that there's lots of studies that show how emotions have an impact on our health. So,
yeah,
yeah, no, but it again, we saw it firsthand, and it just has when you've lived it, then you're like, whoa, okay, what little changes can I make in my life
right.
that I'm able to kind of cleanse myself from that and not hold it on in my body somewhere, whether
Yeah.
it's sadness, whether it's anger, whether um, is resentment, whatever those emotions that we sometimes don't express because of what you just mentioned of
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to hurt those around us, but at the same
Right.
time, they end up hurting us by
Right.
holding them and eventually end up hurting those around us because then they have to deal with the consequences of
Right.
what they have to feel with when we if we get ill. So so no, that's a very valid. Now in that too, in that journey, your your kids were much younger. Your youngest Bayon was only one when our mom passed, and
Mm-hmm.
Soraya was she 3 at that
Yeah, she
moment?
was 3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So um with that, how have you been able to maintain? And they've never met our sister. None of our kids have met our,
Mm-hmm.
none of our kids met our sister. So can just share a little bit about how you keep um their memory alive in their lives, and yeah, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, different ways, and um through pictures, and like definitely pictures and video like really help, um for them to connect with these souls, um with their grandma and their aunt, um through stories, also, through prayer. When we say prayers, many times we'll say like, hey, why don't we say a prayer for your aunt, or for if your tia Soris, or
Mm-hmm.
Lita, your grandma. So those are definitely some of the go-to ways that we've used for them to connect, and you know for their memory to live on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Now, what are you grateful for? What
Mm.
are you grateful for in this whole process?
So much, honestly, and I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I've already shared a few things, but um I'm just I'm grateful to be able to experience, um like, in a sense, even though I haven't experienced death myself, or had like a near death experience or anything along those lines, um to be a witness of the beauty of life and death, and to really see it as a journey, as a path, mm, as just a transition to another dimension. um I'm just grateful to have a wider perspective about these things, even though it's not like I understand it fully. It's still extremely mysterious, but I feel like I just feel closer to it. um and that is one thing that I'm extremely grateful for, because I feel like it shapes my everyday life. Like, what is my purpose on this world? What am I here to do? How am I going to take advantage of each moment? Should I be watching this 10-minute YouTube video from entertainment, whatever, like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or should I be
Well,
doing something else?
once in a
Well, I mean,
while, you
yeah, yeah,
can too. Yeah.
I know, I know, but
It's
definitely, but
not-
like, it those kinds of thoughts come into my mind, like, wait a minute, like, am I just wasting my time here?
Mm,
um or like, can I be doing something more significant?
mm,
So,
thank you. Thank you so much, hermano, for being part of this. And now, before we wrap up, I want to just say, how can people find you if they want to hear a little bit more of all your music and everything that you've done as well, because that, again, that has been something that's even birthed even more in this process of your grieving journey. So if they want to listen, you have a podcast, you have, so if you want to just share your hashtag this, whatever, your taglines, if people want to find you.
Sure. Yeah, I think to not give too many links, I'll just mention my most recent project, and you guys can follow that project at One Planet Music. So at the website oneplanetmusic.com, which is that's my podcast where I talk about um, music and its role in society, and on Instagram at oneplanetmusic.fm.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I am grateful um, to have been able to experience um, the grieving process with the most incredible human beings, which are, I'm going to cry, happen to be my siblings that I learned so much of every single day of my life. So thank
You're so
you. I
sweet.
love you.
I
I
love
love
you,
you,
Kendra.
hermano. And thank you for being my first interview. I love you.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's such an
Okay.
honor.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.